Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer with host Kris Kendall. Over the next hour, you will learn what keeps Kristina and her guests busy with all their day-to-day life tasks. Now, here's Kristina.
Hey there, welcome to Musings of a Super Doer. I'm your host and resident super doer, Kris Kendall. I'm so glad you're joining us today. So in this episode, and really in all the episodes, I'm just going to be sharing some random musings of what's going on in my world and maybe what's going on in your world too. And so one of the first things that I'm doing, in this new year, new projects, got lots of new stuff going on, is this show. I've been wanting to do a podcast, webcast type of show for a long time, several years. And back in August of last year, I was unexpectedly laid off, which I'm sure lots of people can relate to. It's, not an uncommon situation right at the moment, unfortunately. So when I had the time, I decided I'd finally go for it. And so this is the first ever episode, and I'm going to be talking about lots of different things. In general, it'll be books that I'm reading, shows that I'm watching, projects that I'm starting, products that I'm buying, opinions that I have, because I have a lot of opinions, things that I'm investing in, etc. So just a little bit of everything over here. So today, specifically, we're going to talk about a company that I recently invested in called Boxabl. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're really awesome. A nonprofit organization that I started just in the past couple months called m-e.space. And then we'll also talk about something that is kind of random. Not everybody understands it, but I think it's really important for people to understand, and that's high-deductible medical insurance plans. So really, you're going to get a bit of everything today. And then if we have some time, I might share some other tidbits, but let's go ahead and get started. So investments. So I am a high-risk investor. I am willing to lose all the money that I invest. Now, I don't want to lose it, of course. Every time I go into an investment, it's with the idea that it's going to, be the big one that, takes me into retirement or whatever. But I never use like grocery money or rent money to make an investment. So I'll start by saying that. But I have taken some pretty big risks, and one of them that I did recently is with a company called Boxabl. So I really have always loved real estate, and I've over the years considered getting into real estate as an agent, and that's actually really hard. I've looked at the tests, and I've kind of gone through some of the courses, and you have to understand a lot of legal stuff and math, and I'm not really the following laws type of, not that I don't follow laws, but to the letter of the law seems very risky for me. So that's one of the things that I've decided I probably can't be an agent. But I wanted to get involved in real estate in some way. And when when I started hearing about like tiny home manufacturing, everyone's, excited about these little tiny homes, ADUs. I'm in California, and ADUs are all the rage. You can put them in your yard. You can, start making a rental income from them. You can put your in-laws in them, whatever your needs are. It's this, kind of growing industry that I was really fascinated with. So back in the spring of 2020, right at the height of COVID and everyone's locked in their house, and, I'm watching the news constantly, just waiting for the cure so that I can leave my house again. I came across this modular home builder that was fundraising, and they're like building this giant factory in a city near where I live. And it was a very large investment. For me, it was a very significant, big investment that was like their minimum purchase. But I went for it. I was, it's a big risk, and I might not ever see a penny of that money again, but I felt like I just wanted to be a part of that in case. But more recently, I came across Boxabl, and the great thing about Boxabl is you can get involved at a much smaller level. I think I mean, you can buy the share. There's probably a minimum of like maybe 100 shares, but the share price is like $1 or something like that, 70 cents maybe. So for, a few $100s or maybe a couple thousand, you can get in sort of at the ground floor of this company. And so I made a decent size investment. And so basically what Boxabl is they're flat shipped tiny houses, and they get delivered like on the back of a big trailer, not like if you've ever seen going down the highway, a single wide that, on a wide load kind of a thing. And then, behind it is the other half of that home. And then they kind of put them together. So this is more like an IKEA house. It's like shipped flat, and then they pop it up on all sides and pop a roof on top, and it's like this whole little house that's installed in a day. Now, obviously, you have to get your foundation poured and make sure there's plumbing and that kind of stuff. So that takes more time. But once the truck comes with your little pop-up house, that's like maybe a day or a few day process. So it's this fascinating way to add like a little studio apartment to your backyard, to your, vacation property, whatever it is. They're really cute. They're like tiny. I mean, I think they're maybe 500 square feet or something like that. But there's a room, a bathroom, a kitchen, a little, seating area to watch TV, whatever. And when they came out, they were only $50,000. So it's really the kind of, for somebody who's buying a house or building their first house, it's certainly affordable as far as houses go. Now, over the past year, I think that price has bumped up, and I think it's more like 60 or maybe even 70,000 now to order a Boxabl, but it's still reasonable. And I don't know if you've priced out construction materials, a piece of plywood or a 2x4 is ridiculously expensive right now. So it's very expensive to build from scratch. And so these Boxables are a great way for someone who, has some space in their yard. They want to, maybe have guest space. Maybe they just need a home office, or they've got teenage kids that are going to be looking to be, have more privacy and more space as they become adults, but maybe can't afford, or for whatever reason aren't ready to live out on their own quite yet. It's an option for them. I'm really trying to figure out how I can fit one in my backyard. The way my house is set up, the place that I want to put it is not quite big enough for a Boxabl, but I'm really figuring out what I can possibly do to get one installed, because I really, really want one. But even if I don't get one personally, I'm super excited to have invested in it. And for someone who thinks that the the modular home industry is growing, I would urge you to check them out. And it's Boxabl. It's missing the E at the end, I think is how you spell it. You can go on YouTube and see these cool little videos, and, just it's fascinating to see how they plan to install these in, not just for single uses in people's backyard, but to build entire communities. These are great to solve some of the housing shortages that cities are facing. If I, won the lotto, I would totally buy a big piece of land and put hundreds of these in for those that are experiencing, homelessness. The unhoused would have a place, to live in these cute little studio apartments that I absolutely love. Um, so anyways, I just wanted to, get these out into, for those people that are thinking about making an investment outside of the stock market. I mean, it's still essentially buying stock, but it's, instead of looking at it at the same level, because they're not a public company yet. So it's not like you go buy it today, and if you change your mind, or the price is going to change tomorrow and you can get out and make a profit. It's not like that. Because they are not yet public, you're putting money in, you're buying shares, but they may never go public. You may never ever get a penny back. And so it's definitely a different kind of investment than going to buy shares of Microsoft or Amazon or something like that. But for me, it's super fun. And I actually was in Las Vegas back in November, a couple months ago, and I was able to visit the Boxabl warehouse that they have there. It's huge. It's like, I guess what you would imagine a housing factory to look like, with just, walls everywhere, and they're in various stages of being built. But it's so cool to, take a look and know that you're really a part of something that could be big, something that could really change the lives for lots of people, not just on the investor side, because I am hoping that my, you know, smallish 5-figure investment will turn into a 6-figure profit at some point in the, next 5 or 10 years. That may or may not happen. But it's also for the people who are going to, who may not have access to like their own big house, or who want to build areas on their property for family, guests, friends, build a short-term rental type of a thing. Where I live in the Silicon Valley, people put tents in their backyards and rent those out as Airbnbs. And so there's definitely a market for that. That's not in my particular neighborhood. I don't think that that would fly in the same way. But yeah, if I can get one of these cute boxes in my yard, I definitely will. And I am telling everybody to check it out, as an investor or just as a potential ADU, if you're looking for something to add to your yard, your property, just to make an extra living space, or family space, TV room, whatever. Okay, so we are going to take a quick break, so you can go grab a snack, check your stocks, check out Boxabl. And when we get back, we will be talking about charitable giving. Hello. Okay. So thanks for joining me, Kris Kendall, for Musings of a Super Doer today. So the next thing I wanted to muse about with you is a different kind of investment that I've been making in the form of charitable giving. So also back when I had some free time, because I was laid off a few months ago, I decided to finally start my nonprofit. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I, it was never the right time, but as I started, I was in a job that was based on corporate philanthropy, and something that I had never really been involved with before and didn't totally understand. And so as I spent a few years doing that and really learned how these nonprofits profits work, how they rely on donations, how they help, different people and different causes. And so as I took that knowledge and really sort of focused it on something that I've been passionate about for a long time, I was able to create something called the micro entrepreneur space. So that's if you were to go to the website, it's micro-entrepreneur dot space. So or the easy way of doing it is m-e.space, m.e.space. Anyways, it's kind of like Shark Tank and Kiva. I don't know if you're familiar with Kiva, but if they had a teeny tiny little baby, that is micro entrepreneur space. It's basically, I'm offering micro grants to aspiring entrepreneurs. So that, in my mind, it was going to be mostly for like kids or young people who wanted to start a business. This goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, probably 8, 9, 10. I've always had this like hustle personality, and always wanted to start a business, and always thinking about ways to make money and things I could sell and things I could do and services I could provide. And I started babysitting when I was very young. And then as I was like in high school, I sold Avon with a friend. And, even those kind of things, you have to pay up front, right? You have to buy the initial kits, you have to pay for the registration or to become a member. When I was babysitting, I had to place ads. So sometimes that just meant printing out flyers and using a thumbtack on some of the bulletin boards in the neighborhood. But a lot of times I would run ads in, like, there's this neighborhood newspaper called the Potpourri. I don't even know if they're still around anymore. I think it's sort of like the Thrifty Nickel or Penny Saver, like those kind of small, like town focused classified papers. So back then, that's what we used. I mean, today I would probably use, I don't even know, Nextdoor or Craigslist or something, but all of those types of ads to tell people that you have a service, they cost money, right? And if you need business cards, or if you want to you know, um, participate in a boutique or a function of some kind, a flea market, depending on what you're offering, that's not free usually. So my idea and my nonprofit is to provide small amounts of money to people who are starting a business, that just need a little bit of help. So these are not big grants. They're not, $50,000 Shark Tank or $500,000, because most of it's coming out of my money, my pocket, that I have donated to the nonprofit. It is a tax deductible donation. So anybody who's interested in making a donation, or who does, annual donations, you will be able to write this off as a tax deduction. But they're more in the like $200 to $500 range. So, maybe a teenager or a young adult who just wants to get something going, but doesn't have that kind of extra cash, even $200 to get business cards and run some ads, is often not attainable to a 15-year-old, right? So that's why we're here. So I am making it really easy. I'm not asking for lots of documentation, lots of proof. You don't have to have sales yet. You just have to have an idea. Tell me what you are going to be doing, and why you're doing it, and what you need money for, and how much money you need. And so, so far we've had a handful of grant requests come in, and that have been awarded. So that's super exciting. And I have one board member that has joined the board, and I'm open to additional, really what I'm looking for is like mentors that want to work with some of these new business owners and these new entrepreneurs to help them if they have questions just on how to do things. So I'm accepting applications for board members as well, and for people who just want to participate at whatever level, whatever they have to offer. We will certainly be open to accepting help. And this isn't only for kids. So in my mind, I was sort of thinking the kids or young people are the ones who are going to be looking for a $200 loan, grant, or small amounts. But, this could be somebody who has, just on a very tight budget, who struggled, maybe even a senior citizen who's on a fixed income and doesn't have a lot of extra cash, but wants to try something new, and with a small influx of funding, would be able to take that step and maybe supplement their income at a, more material level. So definitely, if this is something that has any kind of interest to you, or if you know people, if you know any high school students or college students, or just people that have been thinking about starting a business, but maybe they are afraid to risk their own money. If they have funds and they just don't want to use their own money, that's, not exactly the spirit of what this organization was intended for. But they can submit an application, or they can come to us just for mentorship or for some coaching, some business coaching. And maybe they just need to talk to a person that can give them some ideas and help at that level, and not necessarily financially. So, my goal is to help people become business owners. So whether that means starting a dog walking business, mowing lawns, or, launching a product, whatever they have in mind, we will certainly would love to help them in any way that we can. If it's a type of thing that we don't have the expertise to help with, we can assist with finding some of that expertise. My board advisor partner and I have lots of resources in lots of different industries. And so we can certainly reach out to some of those within our network to see if there might be someone available to help with answering those kind of questions and just getting some of those starting barriers. Sometimes you just need a little bit more confidence too. You just need to know that you're on the right track, that you're not doing something crazy, and that it's worth putting in the time and effort for. And so we can be a sounding board for that as well. So yeah, definitely tell your friends, consider a donation. Like I said, it is tax deductible. If you want to donate $10 or $50, that'll help. If you want to donate a few hundred, that could fully fund somebody getting their business off the ground. So, please consider that. But even if you have no interest in this, if you've ever considered starting a nonprofit as a way of helping others, go for it. It's actually not that hard. There are obviously some regulations involved, but if you have an idea and you want to help people, there are easy resources online, free resources to get the paperwork set up with, the IRS filings and stuff like that. And just get it started. There's no time like the present. And I think we've all learned in the past couple of years that we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Things have been a little bit crazy, and stuff changes very unexpectedly for all of us. And so for those people that are newly laid off and not really sure what they want to do, and maybe panicking a little bit about what their future is going to bring, this might be the time to try some of those ideas that you've considered. Now, maybe that means you are applying for a micro grant from us, or maybe you are thinking about starting your own nonprofit. Whichever way you go, I really, definitely encourage you to use this time to do something different. It's the process. For anybody who does decide to request a grant, the process is really easy. You just have to fill out a short survey online. I will say there's not a lot of competition because we haven't, done a lot of advertising yet. So chances are good your request will be approved if we have the funding for it, and if it's a viable business and we think that you could actually make it work, we're going to do what we can to support it. We do have a room for board members, as I mentioned. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please let us know. And consider a donation. It's just another way to get in front of people that might not otherwise have those resources, and you could really make a difference. Okay, so we are going to take another short break. When we get back, we will be talking about, now this is super exciting, the world of high deductible medical plans. I know that's a little bit random, but it's a little bit confusing. A lot of people don't understand it, but I think it's really important for people to understand. So I want to talk about it. Okay, everybody, we'll be back soon. Hey there, we're back. For those of you just joining, you missed some titillating conversation about Boxabl, the modular home company that I recently invested in and I think is so fun. We also talked about my nonprofit micro entrepreneur space. So if that's something that could be interesting, check it out. But you're just in time to hear my musings on the often misunderstood high deductible medical plan. Now, yeah, I know I'm all over the map when it comes to topics. I think that's how my ADD that I have diagnosed myself as having in the past year, just how it works. There's lots of things that are going on in my head, and right now, high deductible medical plans is one of the things I want to make sure people understand and give an honest consideration to, because it's pretty interesting. Okay, so let's just get started. All right, so I've recently, I mentioned that I was laid off in a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, and it was very unexpected. It was, yeah, not one of these, in the news for a while and we saw it coming kind of a thing. It was, you know, very unexpected. So, I lost my medical coverage, through my employer, and, so that happens, and that's unfortunate. And so, I had about a month to figure out what I was going to do for medical coverage for my family. And so I had to look at Cobra for the first time ever. I've always gone from one plan to the next plan without having that, uncovered period of time. So I've never had to use Cobra in the past. And so I checked it out. It was about $3,000 a month to cover my family for the comparable plan that my employer was offering. So it seemed unrealistic to commit to that kind of expense at that point. So I only had a couple days left of my existing coverage, and I really needed to make a decision. So I was, recommended to go check out the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And so that is, I think, people call it Obamacare, but it's basically, in the United States, it's the health insurance options that anybody can buy. So if you don't have coverage through your employer or through some other organization, you can just go buy individual coverage there. So, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting when I went there. I thought it would just be like a few options and I just pick one or something. But there's actually hundreds of competing plans. I mean, there's tons. And there's some that are really inexpensive, obviously, but they don't really cover anything. I mean, you're going to be screwed if you get seriously injured or something. So, I ruled those ones out. And of course, they get progressively more expensive as they cover more things. And so, as I went through the list of options, I found exactly what I was looking for, and which it was, you know, I tend to, I believe in karma and I try to do good things. And so I feel like I'm generally pretty lucky and I have good things happen to me pretty often. So that's nice. So the plan that I found was, half the cost of Cobra. And I checked the network, and all of the doctors that were currently using, that my family uses, work in the network. And there were some various options that were still, um, based on the cost went up based on what we wanted. But it ended up being that for about $1,800, which still a lot and a lot more than I would have liked to have paid, but for about $1,800, I could get an EPO, a PPO, or an HMO. So they were all in that same range. And then when I broke it down to high deductible plans, I went with a high deductible PPO with a health savings account. Now, if you're not familiar with the health savings account, this is basically a bank account. It's sort of like your flex benefits that you might have been doing through your employer for a long time, where you allocate, say, $1,000 a year, and that's going to go towards any expenses that come up. But if you don't spend that $1,000, you lose it, right? This is that use it or lose it. And now you can roll over like 500 to the next year. But still, you have to really plan exactly how much to put away based on how much you think you're going to spend. And if you overestimate, you might lose some money. And then, so with the difference with the health savings account is that you don't lose that money. You can put in whatever amount you think you might need, or as much as you want, up to the limit. I think the limit is, I don't know the limit exactly. It's somewhere in the like $6,000 or $7,000 range per year, I think, but I don't know for sure. And that changes, I think, every year. So look that up if that's something interesting. But anyway, so you can put up to that amount, and that's basically your money. But you can only use it for medical type of thing. So medical, dental, etc. So it's really, the best of both worlds is having this pre-tax money put away for medical expenses, but you don't lose it if you don't spend it. Best case scenario, you're healthy, you only have some basic doctor appointments, even better if they're like fully covered preventative kind of stuff, and you don't spend really any money, and all that you put into your health savings account can be saved for next year or the following year, or when you're older and you will have more, health expenses, medical expenses. So I'm not a specialist in this. I am just a regular employee who has had to do the open enrollment every year and look through all the options and do all the different plans. But I started doing these health savings plans when I was at a company that basically what they offered is that if you did this high deductible plan, now the thing about it is it costs less than probably your standard HMO or PPO. It's going to cost a lot less, but that's because you're going to pay more out of pocket. That high deductible means high deductible. So if you might be used to paying like a $20 copay or a $200 deductible, you might be paying, the full amount of your visit up until like a $6,000 deductible. So it really is a lot more money that you're going to be paying out of pocket if you have medical expenses. So when I started at my new company, I was looking at their plans. Their plans, like, I want to say it was around $300 per paycheck for the standard HMO PPO offering, right? Or it was $100 per paycheck for this high deductible plan. Now, for someone who's on a budget, they might say, oh, well, okay, well, I'm just going to go with $100 per paycheck. That's better, right? But the problem is, if you have medical expenses, if you have young kids that are constantly getting sick, breaking bones, getting, fevers, that kind of thing, where you're going to be in the doctor's office a good amount of time, or maybe you have prescriptions that are pretty expensive, you might be better off paying more on a regular HMO or PPO plan, because you're going to have a low deductible and you're just going to pay your $20 copay or something. And that's all you're paying out of pocket. But for the people who don't go to the doctor that often, who, unless there's some sort of an accident or emergency, they go once a year, maybe they get a couple prescriptions, but they don't really spend that much money. The high deductible plan can be a great option, because you pay your, say, $100 per paycheck. And then what I'm doing is that extra $200 that I would have paid toward the premium of the other plan, I'm putting that into my health savings account. So I'm still paying the same amount. I'm still paying $300 per paycheck, but instead of all 300 just being gone every 2 weeks, for coverage that I may never use, right? Knock on wood, I never have to go to the doctor for anything serious. So I'm actually only losing, or using $100 towards a premium, and the other $200 is just mine. It's just sitting in an account. Now, when I do go to the doctor and I do have to have a root canal, or I have a broken bone, or someone in the family has some sort of back injury or something like that, we're going to be shelling out a couple $1,000s, right? So the person who has the other account, the more standard HMO, that might be covered at like 70%. So they may get like a $400 bill or a $1,000 bill, whereas my bill for that same thing might be $6,000, because I have to meet the entire deductible. It does cap out, and the caps are usually, from what I've seen and the policies that I've had offered to me from employers, is 6,000 to 7,000 a year is tend to be the max that I'm going to pay out of pocket. So as long as I put that money into a health savings account throughout the year, it's available, and I can just use that account, and I pay my high deductible, and I'm in the same place everybody else is, because after you meet that deductible, then you have the full coverage that everyone else has. But if I don't use it and nobody had a big fall or a major incident, then that's just my money, and I can roll it into next year and the next year and the next year. So for people who don't tend to go to the doctors very often, or have, are pretty healthy and take care of themselves and don't foresee, now, of course, you can't always foresee this, but if you tend to not use a lot of money, to not have to pay a lot for doctor's visits. A high deductible plan might be more economical for you in the long run because you're paying lower premium, and as long as you do put some money aside, I mean, unless you have a good amount of savings in the bank that you'll always be able to cover a $6,000 or $10,000 bill if that comes up. But if you are taking advantage of the health savings account and putting a little bit aside every month, when you do have a big expense and you have that high deductible bill that comes up, you'll be ready for it, and you will have it's pre-tax money, and you will not have had to put out so much right up front. So definitely not for everybody. For those that are at the stage where they're having babies, they have maternity fees, they're definitely going to be in the doctor's office regularly in next year or over the next 5 years. You might not be at the right place in your life that the high deductible plan makes sense, unless, like I said, you do have a good savings account that will cover that deductible. But if you're on kind of a tight budget and you need the maximum coverage paid, stick with your HMO. But for the rest of us that, or for the people that are maybe at the, my kids are adults now, they're grown, they don't go to the doctors as often as they did when they were young and needed regular appointments, and we're getting scrapes and bumps and bruises more often. So now we're at the stage where this high deductible has been great, and having this health savings plan, because I haven't used it all every year, it rolls over, and for a while there I had a pretty good cushion of medical bill money that we could use if there was a dental emergency or a big expense. Unfortunately, last year we did have some big expenses. There were a couple accidents or a couple MRIs that had to be done, a few ambulance trips that ate up, that deductible pretty quickly. So that was one year that I kind of wished we had been on the other plan, but we were prepared for it, right? I knew that it was always a possibility. We had the savings account, the health savings account funded and ready to go. And so, that was that year. This is the new year. Hopefully we won't have that, those kind of experiences, but you never know. So anyways, just wanted to make sure that if you haven't considered it because it seems scary or too expensive, don't completely rule it out. At least take a look at it to see if it might be the right choice for your family and your situation. Okay, so we're gonna take another quick break. When we get back, we'll have more interesting musings to discuss, and go grab a snack, and we'll talk to you in a minute.
Welcome back to Musings of a Super Doer with your host, Kristina Kendall. Have a question for Kristina or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show.
Hello, thanks for sticking with me. I'm Kris Kendall, host of Musings of a Super Doer. So we've talked about a few things that I find interesting, some investments, some charitable stuff, and some, kind of boring medical stuff. So now I want to share some musings about shows I'm watching. So the first thing I do whenever I'm with any of my friends is, what shows are you watching? What are you binging these days? What have you found that I haven't found? I watch a lot of TV because I work at home, and I often have, not usually during the day. During the day, I'll have like Bloomberg on in the background. But once evening comes and the kids are in bed, and the house is quiet, and I'm doing work, I like to have all of my bingeable shows on as sort of like background. So lots of TV talk in my world, and so you're going to probably be hearing about random shows during every episode. So one of the ones that I am fascinated by, and I don't, in kind of a good and a bad way, is The Parent Test. Have any of you guys seen this? It's basically a reality show where they have a bunch of families, and I don't know if it's like maybe 12 different families that have different parenting styles, and they've kind of named every parenting style. So there's like the free range parenting and the negotiation parenting and the high achieving parenting and the natural parenting and the child-led parenting and super strict and religious and I don't know all the different parenting styles. And so I pride myself, I like to think that I had this great parenting style, and I raised these great kids, and that's true. They are very good kids. And I do get compliments on, the fact that they're good humans at this point in their life. But um when I watch this show and see, so basically what they do is they will set up different like tests essentially for these families. So for example, in one episode, they had the parents leave the room and leave the kids sort of, alone downstairs or whatever, and they had a stranger come knock on the door, and the test was whether or not the kid would answer the door, would let the stranger in the house, how that would go down. Um, so that's one that I have no idea how my kids would have responded to that. I mean, I'd like to think that we instilled this like fear of bad things if they open the door to a stranger, but honestly, we also instilled this like always be polite and always, you know, be respectful of adults and that kind of thing. So they might have very well opened the door and invited them in and offered them a drink or something like that. So I don't really know how we would have fared in that test. And then there was another test of like they took the kids had to go off of to jump off of a high dive. Now, that's one where my kids would have done it. But what they were testing was like how the parents like soothed the kids that were scared or encouraged them and made them feel empowered and confident. And as I was watching it, I realized I would have probably been kicked off the show right around this point because I would not have been so kind. I think I would have, number 1, bribed them, like, "Okay, if you just jump, I will buy you something, and we'll go get ice cream. We'll, do something special." So probably my first move would have been to bribe, which I think is generally not the best parenting strategy. And then if that didn't work, I think I would have been pretty forceful of like, "You're gonna do this. Just get over there and jump. Stop being a baby. Don't be afraid, whatever." And I think I would have probably said some things that would have been frowned upon. And then I was joking with my son, but I think really would have done it. At that point, I probably would have picked him up and thrown him off the high dive. They know how to swim. I know they're not gonna drown. They're not gonna get hurt. I know that they're gonna love it in the end and have fun and wanna do it. Um, but yeah, I probably would have not done so well. And as the show has gone on, I think there's probably been 3 or 4 episodes now, and maybe there's 1 or 2 left. I realized that as much as I think that I was a great parent and I did all the right things and, I created these great humans, I think that I really got lucky a lot of the time, and they have turned out to be pretty decent humans in spite of some of the things that I did and some of the choices we made. But anyways, it's if you are a parent or especially if you have kids in like that probably 2 to 10 age range, you might find it very interesting. After your kids are about 10, I really feel like you're sort of too late to make a lot of I mean, you need to make different kind of changes in how you interact with them and communicate with them as they, become teenagers and young adults and that kind of thing. But if you're looking for parenting strategies and you've got a 10-year-old, you probably already you're set in your way and your kids are set in their way, so it might be too late to really try something new. But it's fascinating to watch, and it's very interesting to see how strategies that I thought would be really good, I don't like necessarily how when I see it implemented, I don't really like what it's doing to the kids or how the parents are doing it. And then so strategies where I felt like that is ridiculous and horrible and I would never ever do that. Those kids are actually pretty awesome and the families seem to be pretty good. Good. So, it's surprising, it's interesting. Um One other show that we just picked up that we put on the back burner since COVID happened is The Blacklist. So we were binging The Blacklist through like probably I guess late 2019 into early 2020. Then um when COVID happened, we got caught up and we watched that last episode where they did half of it in animated because I'm guessing they shot, part of the episode while everyone was in person, and then everything got locked down and all the filming and stuff got locked down. So in order to just finish off that half episode, they animated it. So that was really an interesting and I thought a smart and clever way of doing it just to get that episode finished. And so the season that, would have normally gone a couple more episodes, I think they might have had 3 or 4 planned. They just ended that season and then did nothing for a while, right? And so they did come back, and I think there were 2 seasons after that. So we just started back up on that. So now I don't know if this show is like finished or if we're in between. But anyways, that's a fun one. If you're into like FBI murdery, it can be a little gory. I feel like that might be one of the shows where lots of eyeballs get like exploded. I don't know. People always go for the eyeball. But it's an interesting show. My son and I enjoy that. And if you were watching it, now's a good time to get back to it. Okay. So we're getting to the end of this maiden episode, and I'm so glad that you all stuck with me for this long. I wasn't sure if I would even stick with me this long. So thank you for hanging out with me today. I look really looking forward to sharing more musings with you next time. We'll be probably talking about self-publishing books. So if you are thinking about books as a side hustle or just as a passion project, I'll have some information on that. I'll have more parenting faux pas that I want to share that are kind of fun and also frightening. And then probably talk about some more random musings that who knows what I'll be thinking about in a whole week from now. So you won't want to miss it. Until then, stay safe and keep doing.